Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I have a pretty interesting topic I want to discuss with you all. That is something I heard from someone a while back. I'm so sorry I don't remember who, but I believe it was either someone in my comment section or on one of my lives, but they threw out an idea relating to build diversity in the Division 2's endgame and how they would go about improving, and I thought it was a really good idea. I remember replying back to them saying as much. And so given we're getting closer and closer to seeing the full scope and reveal of the Division 2's update, which is evidently going to revamp a lot of the core experience of the game, as we got a glimpse at with the spec rework article and the expertise article, I thought this would be the perfect time to talk about this, maybe in the faint hopes that the devs see this and consider adding it to the to-do list, either for this big update in February or one of the subsequent title updates in 2022 that were confirmed to us back in October. But more than anything, I'm just very curious to gauge all of your guys' thoughts on it, because it might be a tad controversial. I don't anticipate everyone agreeing on this, but that's the fun part about discussions, right? One thing I want to clear up before we dive in is that you may have noticed I referred to the Division 2's new update as TU14 in the title. I gave up on using TU numbers after we all got kind of baited with the whole TU13 deal, where TU13 was actually already a thing as of like June. I still don't even know how that happened. But I've just been calling it the big update, new update, the update for a while. And while it doesn't really matter, I'm probably the only one who cares about this whatsoever. It's just easier if I give it a name I can refer to it as in the title of my videos. And so until we hear otherwise, to find out it's somehow we're already in TU14, I'm just going to be referring to the Division 2's upcoming February update as TU14 for the foreseeable future. Cool? Cool. Let's jump into the discussion. So the whole basis for this build diversity discussion revolves around two of the most prominent items in the Division 2's endgame that contribute significantly to reducing the build diversity in the game. You might be able to guess what those two items are: the Fox's Prayers named Overlord knee pads and the Contractor's gloves named Petrov gloves, which, if you don't know, give you damage to targets out of cover and damage to armor respectively, making them by far the best in slot items in the game, typically for most damage and tank damage combo builds. Not only because those are gear items from which you can get those stats as attributes, but also because they give it in such high amounts. And so ever since TU8 and Warlords of New York, when they were introduced, these two bad boys have been dominating build videos, theory crafting, etc., because they're just that good. You are quite literally putting yourself at a statistical disadvantage if you're not using them, assuming we're talking about, a relevant build for them, of course. And look, I'm not inherently against best in slot items, right? I used to play WoW. I get the cool factor of having an item in your inventory where it's like, whoa, this is literally the best thing I could be using, no questions asked. But in a game like The Division, where build making and RPG elements tend to be on the lighter side, especially with how WoNI reduced and dumbed down the depth and amount of choice within build making, the inclusion of Foxes and Contractors to the loot pool are really just bland at this point to me. It makes what should be a 6-piece build setup feel more like a 4 or 5 one when I'm coming up with new build ideas, because I already know that I have to sacrifice the knee pad and or glove slot to these items. So this change that I'm going to discuss in a moment would fix that. However, not in such a way where you demolish their power. In fact, quite the opposite. This proposition wouldn't nerf their power levels at all. It would just add one additional requirement to utilize their bonuses, and that would inherently make them less universal as to, oh, I have to use this. And that change would be, again, credit to the person who threw this out at me, making their respective bonuses, again, damage to targets out of cover and damage to armor, making those only apply to your character or setup if you're using the associated brand's weapon damage bonus. So for example, on Fox's Prayers, instead of it automatically applying 8% DTC to your build, automatically, it only applies to any rifles that you have equipped, because Overlord gives you 10% rifle damage. And similarly, Contractors would only give you the damage to armor bonus on any LMGs you may be using, because the one piece of Petrov gets you 10% LMG damage. And so there you have it. That's the pitch. Like I said earlier, I bet some people are fuming at the idea of that right now. They don't want to be restricted on their best in slot item, and that's all right. I get it. But I really just feel like this would be so much more healthier for the game, especially considering there hasn't been any balancing shifts in practically a year now, and nothing has challenged those two items in over 18 months since Warlords dropped. An implementation of this sort of change would also see a lot more freedoms on AR and SMG builds. It opens the door for cool new exotic knee pads or gloves to come into play that could be valuable for damage builds, and it would just further emphasize people using LMGs and rifles, which are probably two of the lesser used gun classes in the game. And hell, Massive could even buff up the DTC and DTA values on Foxes and Contractors to make them even more enticing to use with a dedicated rifle or LMG setup. Then you might actually see more people contemplate using their fallback, standard AR builds, or experiment a bit and see just how lethal they can make an LMG in PvE or PvP. I just think it'd be a really cool change to see, something that would crack open the possibilities of true build diversity once again, and I'll certainly be very curious to hear everyone's thoughts. One thing I'll mention before I wrap up is that this could also lead into a new precedent for new named items that we may see throughout 2022 and the new seasons. Like if all of a sudden Foxes and Contractors only apply to their associated brand weapons, how cool would it be if we got a new named Fenris mask that gives you like 15% crit damage exclusively for ARs, or a named Sokolov holster that gets you 9% crit chance only for SMGs, right? Like shifting over to this new ideology of being a bit more exclusive for what type of gear and builds can access these bonuses could inherently allow for a lot more new and cool items and bonuses to be added to the game. I think it'd be a really awesome, chance to see a landscape where each gun class had a unique to named item bonus they could access, and in doing so, you create a lot more opportunity for unique builds, damage or otherwise. Maybe you want to use that 9% crit chance SMG holster so you can invest some other attributes into another stat. Or maybe you do want to use it so you can slot in an exotic in another slot. Like there's a lot of possibilities out there waiting to happen, and I for one would be very curious to see what a shakeup to these best in slot items would mean in something like TU14 and just the larger Division 2 endgame in general. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on this little discussion today surrounding build diversity and its limitations, with the Foxes, Prayers, and Contractor gloves being how they are. Do you agree with this person's idea and my elaboration on it that adding some sort of weapon class restriction would both benefit greater build diversity and help pump up some of those lesser used archetypes? Certainly let me know all of your thoughts on that down below. I'll be very curious to gauge just how divisive of an idea this will be. I have a feeling a lot of people are very protective over their Foxes and Contractors, but who knows, maybe not. I for one would just like to see some changes after things have been stagnant for so long, and maybe a lot of you will feel the same way. We'll see. That's going to do it for today though, everybody. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.